convert between the different visual acuities. So let's say I gave you 2060. To get the MAR of 2060, you just take the denominator and you divide it by the numerator. So 60 divided by 20 equals 3. So that's 3 MAR. To go from the MAR back to 2020, you just multiply that number by 20, and that's the denominator. So if I said the MAR was 5, you do 5 times 20 equals 100, so it's 2100. To get log MAR, you just take the log of the MAR. So again, we have 3 as the MAR from 2060. So log 3 equals, I think 0.477, something like that. And to go from log MAR back to 2020, what you do is you take the inverse log and you multiply that number by 20. So if I said the log MAR is 0.77, if I take the inverse log of 0.77, which is the same thing as 10 to the power of 0.77, that equals like 5.88, which I'm going to round to 6. And I'm going to take that number, multiply by 20, so 120. So this is 2120. For decimal notation, you just take the numerator, divide by the denominator. So if I take 20 divided by 60, that equals 0.33. If they give you the decimal notation and they want you to go from that to 2020, you take the decimal, you take 20 and you divide it by the decimal. So if I said you had 0.5 in decimal notation, you do 20 divided by 0.5, and that equals 40. So this would be 2040. And then for M notation and meter notation, you just set up a proportion and you cross multiply. So 2060 equals 0.4 over x. And so just remember that like the denominator is the thing that's changing, not the numerator. So if we cross multiply here, 20x equals 0.4 times 60, which is 24, x equals 1.2. So then you'd have 0.4 over 1.2 m. And same thing for meter notation. So 20 over 60 equals 6 over x, and we cross multiply. So 20x equals 360, and so x equals 18. So we have 6 over 18. And you could go from one of these notations back to 2020 notation by doing the same thing. So I could do 6 over 18 equals 20 over x, and you cross multiply, and then you'd end up with 2060. The last one is point notation. So you just take whatever the m value is and you multiply it by 8. So for 2060, we know that it's 0.4 over 1.2. So we can do 1.2 times 8, which is 9.6. So that's your answer. If you want to go from point notation back to 2020, what you do is you take the point value, you divide it by 8, and then you just set up a proportion. So when you divide it by 8, you end up back at M notation, and then you just set up a proportion to go back to 2020. So let's say I give you 0.8 font. We divide that by 8, and we get 1. So we have 0.4 over 1m, and then that equals 20 over x. If we cross multiply, equals 20, x equals 0.4. So then x equals 50. So that would be 2050.